In those 3 seconds, Chris Kyle wasn't just a sniper, he was the last hope for 3 families. Sarah was 8 years old, Michael was 12, and Emma was only 6. Kyle could see the fear in their eyes. 3 shots, 3 lives, 3 seconds. There was no room for error. The intelligence briefing at 0430 hours had been brutally simple: 3 American children taken hostage by insurgent forces in an abandoned school building in eastern Ramadi. The terrorists' demands were impossible to meet, their deadline was approaching, and conventional rescue operations would almost certainly result in the execution of all 3 hostages before assault teams could breach the building. Staff Sergeant Chris Kyle studied the tactical photographs spread across the mission planning table, his weathered hands tracing the building's layout while his mind calculated angles, distances, and the split-second timing that would be required for what military commanders were calling an impossible rescue operation. Sarah Mitchell, 8 years old, daughter of Marine Captain Robert Mitchell. Michael Rodriguez, 12 years old, son of Navy Chief Petty Officer Maria Rodriguez. Emma Thompson, 6 years old, daughter of Army Staff Sergeant David Thompson. 3 children whose only crime was being born to American military families serving their country in Iraq. The hostage-takers had chosen their location with tactical precision. The abandoned Al-Rashid Elementary School provided multiple escape routes, excellent defensive positions, and most critically, perfect fields of fire that would allow them to execute their hostages at the first sign of a rescue attempt. Kyle's mission was unprecedented in its complexity and moral weight. Intelligence indicated that the 3 terrorists were positioned in different rooms of the school, each guarding a single child, each prepared to kill their hostage if rescue operations were detected. Conventional wisdom suggested that simultaneous elimination of all 3 threats was mathematically impossible. But Kyle wasn't operating under conventional wisdom. He was operating under the absolute certainty that failure meant watching 3 children die while their parents received the worst news any military family could imagine. Lieutenant Colonel James Harrison, the mission commander, approached Kyle's position with the grim expression of a man authorizing an operation that defied every tactical manual he'd ever studied. "Kyle, you understand what we're asking you to do. 3 separate targets, 3 different ranges and angles, with 0 margin for error." Kyle looked up from the reconnaissance photographs, his gray eyes reflecting the kind of calm determination that had made him the most trusted marksman in the SEAL teams. "Sir, I understand the mission parameters. 3 hostiles, 3 hostages, simultaneous elimination required to prevent execution of American children." What Kyle didn't mention was the psychological pressure involved in conducting precision shooting with 3 innocent lives hanging in the balance. This wasn't about eliminating enemy combatants or protecting military personnel, this was about saving children whose only connection to the war was their parents' service to their country. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb, Kyle's spotter and longtime friend, had been studying the tactical challenges with the obsessive attention to detail that characterized elite military planning. "Chris, the geometry is insane. Target 1 is 150 meters at your 2 o'clock, Target 2 is 220 meters at your 11 o'clock, Target 3 is 180 meters at your 6 o'clock. You're talking about engaging targets in a 270-degree arc within seconds of each other." Kyle nodded, already visualizing the shooting sequence that would be required. His position on the 4th floor of a neighboring building provided excellent overwatch of the school, but the angles involved would require him to physically reposition between shots while maintaining the rapid timing necessary to prevent the surviving terrorists from executing their hostages. "Chief, I'll need you to coordinate with the assault teams. The moment I take the first shot, they need to be ready for immediate entry. If any of those terrorists survive long enough to reach their hostages, this mission fails." Kyle's preparation for the most challenging shooting sequence of his military career began with equipment checks that bordered on obsessive. His Macmillan TAC-338 rifle had been zeroed and re-zeroed for the specific ranges involved. His Schmidt and Bender scope had been calibrated to account for the atmospheric conditions, elevation differences, and lighting angles that would affect each shot. But equipment was only part of the equation. Kyle spent 2 hours studying intelligence photographs of the terrorists, memorizing their faces, their positions, and the precise angles required to eliminate each threat without endangering the children they guarded. Khalid al-Masri, the leader, was holding Sarah Mitchell in a second-floor classroom facing north. Intelligence indicated he was armed with an AK-47 and had explosives attached to his vest. Range, 150 meters. Ahmad Nazir was guarding Michael Rodriguez in a third-floor room facing west, armed with a pistol and carrying fragmentation grenades. Range, 220 meters. Hassan al-Dalami was positioned with Emma Thompson in a first-floor room facing south, carrying an automatic weapon and what appeared to be a detonation device. Range, 180 meters. Kyle's tactical analysis revealed the most challenging aspect of the mission. The terrorists were positioned so that any one of them could observe the others being eliminated, giving them time to execute their hostages before Kyle could complete his shooting sequence. Success required simultaneous elimination of all three threats within a time frame measured in seconds rather than minutes. The psychological pressure was unlike anything Kyle had experienced in his military career. He'd eliminated dozens of enemy combatants in high-stakes situations, but those engagements had been about protecting military personnel who understood the risks of combat. This was about saving children who had no understanding of why they were in danger. Kyle studied photographs of the three children that had been provided by their families. Sarah's school picture showed a gap-toothed smile and pigtails. Michael's Little League team photo captured him mid-swing, focused and determined like his mother. Emma's daycare picture revealed the kind of innocent joy that only exists before the world shows you its capacity for cruelty. At 1,347 hours, Kyle received the final mission briefing. Intelligence indicated that the terrorists' deadline was 1,600 hours. Less than 2 hours remained before they would begin executing hostages to demonstrate their seriousness. Negotiations had failed, conventional rescue operations were deemed impossible, and Kyle's precision shooting represented the only viable option for saving the children. Kyle positioned himself behind his rifle and began the most intensive preparation routine of his career. His breathing slowed to the controlled rhythm that eliminated microscopic movements affecting accuracy. His heart rate dropped to the minimal level that characterized elite performance under extreme pressure. His mind entered the focused state where external distractions disappeared and only the mission existed. Through his scope, Kyle could see into the school building where the drama was unfolding. Sarah Mitchell was sitting on the floor in her assigned classroom, trying to appear brave while terror showed in her 8-year-old eyes. The terrorist guarding her, al-Masri, was positioned with his back to the window, his weapon pointed casually in her direction. Kyle shifted his scope to observe the other hostage locations. Michael Rodriguez was standing near a window in his third-floor room, his 12-year-old frame showing the kind of protective stance that suggested he was trying to shield something or someone behind him. The terrorist Nazir was pacing nervously, checking his watch repeatedly. Emma Thompson was barely visible in the first-floor room, her 6-year-old form huddled in a corner while the terrorist al-Dalami spoke rapidly into a radio, coordinating with his associates and apparently receiving final instructions for the execution protocol. Kyle understood that he was observing the final minutes before these children would be murdered if his mission failed. The weight of their lives, their families' grief, and the broader implications of allowing American children to be executed by terrorists created pressure that would have overwhelmed anyone lacking Kyle's psychological training and combat experience. But Kyle had learned during years of combat deployments that exceptional performance required compartmentalizing emotional reactions while maintaining the technical focus necessary for perfect execution. The children's lives depended on his ability to function at the highest level despite unprecedented pressure. At 1,442 hours, Kyle received the authorization he'd been waiting for. Overwatch, this is Control. You are cleared to engage. Execute, execute, execute. Kyle's shooting sequence began with a level of preparation that approached ritual. He verified his range calculations one final time. Target 1 at 150 meters, elevation adjustment minimal, wind drift negligible. Target 2 at 220 meters, moderate elevation adjustment required, slight windage compensation. Target 3 at 180 meters, standard ballistic solution with adjustment for downward angle. Kyle's first shot would target al-Masri, the leader holding Sarah Mitchell. The terrorist was positioned with his back to the window, providing a clear shot that would eliminate him instantly without endangering the child. Kyle settled his crosshairs on the precise point that would ensure immediate incapacitation while minimizing any risk to Sarah. Kyle's breathing reached perfect stillness. His finger found the trigger with the gentle pressure that had become second nature through thousands of hours of training. His mind calculated the exact moment when all variables aligned for perfect shot execution. The first shot cracked across the urban landscape at exactly 14:43:17 hours. Through his scope, Kyle watched al-Masri collapse instantly as the .338 Lapua Magnum round found its mark with devastating precision. Sarah Mitchell looked around in confusion but remained unharmed in the corner of the classroom. Kyle was already transitioning to his second target before the sound of his first shot had finished echoing off the surrounding buildings. His rifle pivoted smoothly toward the third-floor window where Nasir was holding Michael Rodriguez hostage. The terrorist had heard Kyle's first shot and was beginning to react, but Kyle's preparation had accounted for this response. His second shot was fired at 14:43:18 hours exactly 1 second after his first shot. Nasir collapsed in the third-floor room as Michael Rodriguez dove for cover behind an overturned desk. Kyle's final target transition required the most dramatic repositioning of the sequence. Hassan al-Dalami in the first-floor room was positioned at an angle that required Kyle to shift his entire shooting position while maintaining the timing necessary to prevent the terrorist from executing Emma Thompson. Kyle's third shot was fired at 14:43:19 hours 2 seconds after his first shot, 1 second after his second. The bullet found its target with the same precision as the previous shots, eliminating the final terrorist before he could harm Emma Thompson. 3 shots. 3 seconds. 3 lives saved. The silence that followed Kyle's shooting sequence lasted approximately 5 seconds before radio communications exploded with confirmation from the assault teams that had immediately entered the building following Kyle's precision fire. Control, this is Assault 1. Building secured. All 3 hostiles down, all 3 hostages safe and uninjured. Overwatch's shooting was perfect, every target eliminated without endangering the children. Kyle remained behind his rifle, his scope trained on the school building as assault teams evacuated the 3 children to safety. Through his optics, he could see Sarah Mitchell being carried out by a Marine who was probably thinking about his own daughter back home. Michael Rodriguez was walking under his own power, his arm around a Navy corpsman who was checking him for injuries. Emma Thompson was wrapped in a blanket, clinging to an Army medic who was whispering reassurances as they left the building. Chief Webb approached Kyle's position with an expression that mixed professional admiration with personal amazement. "Chris, what you just did was impossible. 3 targets at different ranges and angles, eliminated within 3 seconds with perfect precision. I've never seen anything like it." Kyle slowly lifted his head from his rifle scope, his gray eyes reflecting exhaustion that came not from physical effort but from psychological pressure that few people ever experience. "Chief, it wasn't impossible. It was just necessary." The psychological aftermath of the hostage rescue mission was unlike anything Kyle had experienced in his military career. He'd eliminated 3 terrorists and saved 3 children, achieving perfect tactical success under conditions that challenged every assumption about precision shooting limitations. But the emotional weight of what might have happened, 3 American children executed while their parents waited for news, created pressure that continued long after the immediate mission was complete. Kyle understood that he'd operated at the absolute edge of human capability, where a single mistake would have resulted in tragedy that would have haunted everyone involved for the rest of their lives. Over the following hours, Kyle learned more about the children he'd saved. Sarah Mitchell's father had been on patrol when she was taken, returning to find his base in emergency status and his daughter's life hanging in the balance. Michael Rodriguez's mother had been in surgery, operating on wounded Marines, when she received word that her son was being held by terrorists. Emma Thompson's father had been conducting convoy security operations, completely unaware that his 6-year-old daughter was facing execution unless a miracle occurred. The 3 families were eventually reunited with their children in emotional scenes that Kyle observed from a distance, understanding that his role in their salvation would remain classified for years. The official reports would describe the rescue as a successful special operations mission, but the specific details of Kyle's unprecedented shooting sequence would be studied by military analysts seeking to understand the absolute limits of human precision under pressure. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison approached Kyle during the mission debrief with the kind of expression reserved for witnessing something that challenges fundamental assumptions about what's possible. "Kyle, I've been in special operations for 18 years, and I've never seen shooting that equals what you accomplished today. 3 perfect shots in 3 seconds at 3 different targets with 3 lives in the balance." Kyle considered Harrison's observation while cleaning his rifle with the methodical precision that characterized everything he did. "Sir, the mission required 3 shots in 3 seconds. The stakes made accuracy non-negotiable. When failure isn't an option, you find ways to achieve what needs to be accomplished." What Kyle didn't mention was the personal cost of operating at such extreme levels. The psychological pressure of perfect performance when children's lives depended on his marksmanship had pushed him to limits he hadn't known existed. The mission had been successful, but it had also revealed depths of responsibility and pressure that few human beings ever experience. The intelligence gathered after the mission revealed that the terrorists had indeed planned to execute the children at 1,600 hours, broadcasting the murders to demonstrate their seriousness and psychological impact on American military families. Kyle's intervention had prevented not just 3 tragic deaths, but a propaganda victory that would have been exploited by insurgent forces throughout Iraq. 6 months later, Kyle's hostage rescue shooting sequence had become legend within special operations communities worldwide. Military sniper schools studied his techniques as an example of precision shooting under ultimate pressure, while psychologists analyzed his ability to maintain perfect performance despite emotional stakes that would have overwhelmed most individuals. The 3 children Kyle had saved were eventually evacuated back to the United States with their families, who never learned the specific details of their rescue. Sarah Mitchell resumed her elementary education, Michael Rodriguez continued playing Little League Baseball, and Emma Thompson returned to the innocent world of 6-year-old concerns that had nothing to do with terrorists or hostage situations. But Kyle would always remember the mission as the day he learned that human capability could transcend mathematical limitations when moral necessity demanded perfect performance. His 3 shots in 3 seconds had achieved something that military doctrine considered impossible, proving that exceptional individuals could exceed theoretical boundaries when lives depended on their success. Years later, when Kyle reflected on his military career, the hostage rescue mission stood out not because of its tactical complexity but because of its moral clarity. 3 children had needed saving, and he'd possessed the skills necessary to save them. The mission had required perfect execution under impossible conditions, and he delivered exactly what the situation demanded. The lesson extended beyond military applications. Kyle had learned that human beings could achieve extraordinary things when the stakes justified transcending normal limitations. His success had demonstrated that exceptional performance often required not just technical skill, but the psychological strength to function at maximum capability when failure would result in consequences too terrible to accept. Kyle's 3 shots had saved 3 lives, but they had also revealed something fundamental about the relationship between moral necessity and human capability. When protecting innocent life required perfect performance, exceptional individuals could deliver exactly what the situation demanded, regardless of theoretical limitations or conventional wisdom about what was possible. The 3 children grew up never knowing that their lives had been saved by 3 bullets fired with mathematical precision by a man who understood that some missions transcend normal definitions of possible and impossible. For Kyle, that was exactly as it should be. Warriors existed to protect innocence, not to be recognized for their protection. In 3 seconds, Chris Kyle had changed 3 lives forever. But perhaps more importantly, he had proven that when human life hangs in the balance, exceptional individuals can achieve things that seem impossible until they become absolutely necessary. The mission report concluded with a simple statement: 3 hostile targets eliminated, 3 American hostages recovered without injury. But behind those clinical words was a story of human capability pushed to its absolute limits and found sufficient for the task at hand. 3 shots, 3 lives, 3 seconds. Sometimes that's all it takes to separate tragedy from triumph, and heroes from everyone else.
See you in the next videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe.